Everybody. It is a real pleasure for me to be able to share some words of Torah with you over Chanukah, and it's great to be with so many alumni and friends. We all know Chanukah is the holiday of lights. We celebrate 8 candles, and light has the ability, the capacity to disperse darkness. Light is stronger, it's more powerful than darkness, and certainly we live in a world of tremendous darkness, and the world needs our light, or lagoyim, to be a light onto the nations of the world. But I think there's another element of light, and that is an internal light that each one of us needs to focus on to disperse the darkness not outside of us, but inside of us. In this week's parsha, we read about the incident of Yosef and his brothers. That is when the brothers come down to Egypt and find their brother Yosef to be the ruler, the viceroy, the second in command of the most powerful nation in the world. And at some point during the story, the brothers, who still don't know who Yosef is, who still see him simply as the ruler of Egypt, turn to themselves and ask themselves a very fundamental question. Why? Why is this happening to us? They realize that it's not coincidence that the ruler of Egypt is being so tough on them. They realize this must be some form of divine punishment. So the question is why? Why are they suffering? And the brothers make a startling realization. They pinpoint exactly what their sin was, where they went wrong, why they're suffering at this point in time. Let me share with you the pasuk. Oftentimes when giving a Dvar Torah, it's necessary sometimes to quote a machlokes, Rashi and Ramban, to resolve a contradiction between a number of Gemaras, maybe analyze a medrash. But in this case, all we have to do is read a pasuk. The Torah says the following: Vayomru ish el achiv. The brothers turn to themselves and they say, Aval ashemim anachnu. We are guilty. Why? Al achinu asher ra'inu tsaras nafsho. Because we saw the pain of our brother. Behitchaneno elenu. When he cried out to us. Velo shamanu. But we didn't hear him. We didn't listen. We didn't respond. The Netziv points out on this pasuk, but you don't need the Netziv. It's pasuk pshat in the pasuk. The brothers said, it wasn't wrong to sell Yosef. That wasn't our mistake. We had a din Torah, we had a beis din, and we figured out this is what Yosef deserved and what he needed. Where did we go wrong? When we put our brother in that pit, and he reached his hand up to us, and he cried out, please, don't do this. Don't leave me down here. We were cold, we were calculated, and we were callous. We were unmoved by his cries for help. And that was our Aveira. That's why we're suffering now. Not because intellectually we were wrong. We were correct. But emotionally, we were cold to the needs of our brother. That's why we're suffering today. There's a remarkable Gemara in Masechet Sota that describes Paro's decision to drown the baby boys of the Jewish people in the Nile River. The Gemara says that Paro took 3 advisors. He took counsel from 3 individuals when making this decision. He spoke with Bilam, Yisro, and Eov. Yisro protested. He said he can't do this. Paro kicked him out, but Hashem ultimately rewarded him with becoming a major part of the Jewish people. Bilam supported the idea, thought it was a great idea. For that, Hashem punished him, but Paro obviously agreed with him and treated him well. What about Eov? How did Eov respond? The Gemara says that Eov remained silent. He didn't protest, but he didn't support the idea. And for that, says the Gemara, an amazing thing. For that decision to remain silent, Eov was punished with all of the Yisurim we read in Sefer Eov. That's why he was punished. The Brisker Rav asks, what did Eov do wrong? Would you have done any differently? He saw how Paro had responded to Yisro. He saw that Paro didn't listen to Yisro. Why would he think that his protesting, his arguing would make any difference at all. Why bother? Paro wasn't going to listen. And the Brisker Rav gives a beautiful answer. He says, when you're walking outside and you're barefoot and you step on a nail, you scream. You scream out in pain, not because it makes the pain go away, not because it cures the ailment, not because it solves the problem intellectually, it doesn't. But because when something hurts, you scream. You scream out in pain. And obviously Yisro wasn't pained enough by this notion of the Jewish boys being thrown into the Nile River. And so he didn't scream out. Maybe intellectually he was correct. His protesting would have done nothing. Paro wasn't going to change his mind. But emotionally something was lacking. Emotionally he was able to stand by idly and watch his Jewish brothers suffer. And that's why he was punished. And I think that's where the light of Chanukah needs to illuminate our lives. In addition to spreading the light of Chanukah outwards, we need to be looking inwards. Where's our darkness? What darkness inside of us requires a light to disperse the darkness, to overcome it, to brighten it? I think sometimes we intellectually, philosophically, hashkafically, theologically disagree with our brothers and sisters, to the right and to the left. And we find areas with which we disagree with them, and that's okay. It's okay to disagree. But when one of our brothers is in need, we can't turn a cold shoulder. We can't be callous. That emotional need to help our brothers and our sisters has to overcome, has to shine on that intellectual disagreement. I'll tell you one area in my life where this comes up. Oftentimes you get a knock at the door. Somebody dressed in a certain way, represents a certain hashkafa that maybe doesn't fit exactly with your hashkafa. Maybe they've made life decisions about career, about the future that we disagree with. And intellectually, I don't want to give any tzedakah. I don't want to give to this person to support their decisions with which I disagree, and maybe that's okay. But when our brother, standing at our door, puts out his hand and says, I need help putting food on the table for my children for Shabbos, how do you turn that away? How can we be so cold, so callous, so unmoved, so unemotional to the needs of our brothers? I'll just end with a beautiful story. I just received a book as a gift from somebody by Rav Shlomo Riskin. I believe it's called Listening to God, Inspirational Stories for My Grandchildren. I think that's the name of the book. He tells of his childhood growing up. His family was not religious. Aside for one grandmother, his parents and grandparents were anti-religious. They were secularists, communists, had almost a hatred for Torah Judaism. He said one day he's sitting on a Shabbos afternoon with his mother, and she's smoking a cigarette after their lunch together. And his friend, the town rabbi's son, comes knocking at the door to see if little Shlomo Riskin wants to come play. And little Rabbi Riskin sees his mother with a cigarette in her hand and the rabbi's son at the door, and he sees how she takes the cigarette, puts it behind her back, embarrassed to be smoking on the Sabbath in front of the rabbi's son. When the boy finally leaves, Rabbi Riskin's mother turns to him and says, God didn't know what he was doing. Putting you and I together, you, the future rabbi, me, no religion in my life. God really messed up sticking the two of us together. We don't fit. And then his mother turns back to the dining room to finish her meal, almost reflecting on what she had just said, shakes her head, and she turns back to her son, to little Shlomo Riskin, and she says, no, that's not right. God knew exactly what he was doing. God wanted to make sure that one day when you become a rabbi, you know what it means to love all of God's children, those religious and those not religious. And I think perhaps that's one of the messages of Chanukah. The light of Chanukah needs to light up not only outside of us, but needs to reflect inwards on the darkness that sometimes pervades and is inside of us, and to find a way to light up that darkness in each and every one of us. I want to wish all of you a Chanukah Samayach, and hopefully we'll have the opportunity to learn together more in the future.